everyone, welcome back to the Crafty Author. My name is Anissa, I am the Crafty Author, and welcome to my quilting studio. Today I am going to teach you how to make a very fun project as promised. We are going to be making the Running with Scissors bag by Annie. This is a wonderful pattern, and as you can see, these bags turn out absolutely adorable. They are perfect for carrying all of your sewing supplies, either to have it next to your sewing machine or to take it with you on the run when you're going to a retreat or whatnot. So you can see you've got lots of pockets to put your stuff in. You have your mesh pockets here, zippered mesh pockets. I use mine for my paper piecing. You have a place for your thread. You have a zippered vinyl pocket up here. And I did a review on this the other day and showed you the bags that I have made. And now we are going to be making one of our own. This is the pressing mat. This also comes and protects your tools from getting scratched up and whatnot. So I will be showing you how to make that as well. Now, this particular bag that we're going to make today is going to be a giveaway. So at the end of the tutorial, I will have the instructions on how to enter in to win the giveaway. Anyway, this is the other bag that I did make. This was the Alice in Wonderland inspired. These fabrics are Tula pink fabrics. The fabrics that we're going to be using are also by Tula Pink, and the pattern is by Annie. I will have everything that you need to make this project yourself linked down below in the description box. Let's just get started. Okay, so I have all of our pieces cut and ready to go. The most time-consuming part of this project is definitely the preparation. I have our interfacing pressed onto the backs of our fabric now. So we are finished with that part. So I'm going to go ahead and set these aside. Now I did keep them labeled, as you can see, so that I know which piece is what and where it goes. So I'm just going to set these to the side for right now. Next, what we're going to work on is we are going to work on our bias binding. So if you've never made bias binding, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do this. The instructions are very, very clear on how you do this. So there's no guessing on how to do it. So, I'm going to show you how I do this. And I'm just going to lay this piece down. Now I can't give you the measurements again because this is not my pattern. So we'll just measure this. I have stuff over here. Let me move that out the way. All right, and I'm going to just measure from corner to corner here. And then I'm just going to cut this diagonally. Just like that. You're going to have one piece that's like this. And then you're going to take your other piece. And if you have a good side and a bad side, you want to be mindful of that. This one does have a good side and a bad side. So I am going to just take it and fold it like that. And like I said, the instructions will show you how to do that. Now, what I like to do with mine is I like to pin it so that everything is going to stay in place when I go to sew it. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pop in a couple of pins here. So you should have something that looks like this. I have sewn this with a 1/4 inch seam. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting our strips. And I've got mine marked here on my ruler with where I need to go. And I did that so that it would be a lot easier for me to be able to line this up and just do it. Our bias binding is done. I've gone ahead and rolled it up, and now we are ready to proceed with putting it together so that we can start quilting. So I'm going to set the rest of these pieces aside, and I'm going to grab my 2 larger pieces because this is what the pattern is telling us to do. So we are going to take our main piece of fabric and our lining piece of fabric, and we are going to find our piece of foam that coordinates with that. So right there. And oops, I have my tag too. All right, so you're gonna just take those pieces off right now. I'm going to lay my lining piece right side down. Then I'm going to lay down my foam on top of here, on top of my lining fabric. I'm going to make sure that everything is nice and lined up as best as I can get it. Now, if it's not exact, don't worry about it because we will be trimming this down anyway, but we do want to get it as close as we possibly can. So here's the main fabric. I'm just going to lay this on top. So you're just going to sandwich the pieces together is what you're going to do. Just going to smooth everything out, and then I'm going to put some pins in there, and then I'm going to take my ruler and my marking tool, and I'm just going to mark lines along here so that I know where I need to quilt to make my diamond pattern design for our main exterior on the bag. Now I'm just going to quilt along those lines that I drew on my fabric, and I'm just going to take my time doing that. Make sure that I've got my lines nice and even so that everything looks really nicely done. I couldn't see there, so I had to remark my spot. I'm going to do this to all pieces. Have everything quilted, and I've already started cutting our pieces for our pockets. So I've got our 2 main pockets cut, and then I have our pockets for our interior cut. Now, I did boo-boo when I was doing it, and so I want to point this out to you if you're working with something like this. If you're doing a directional print, you want to make sure that you lay this down correctly. Otherwise, when you go to cut it, it's not going to work. So when I did mine, I didn't keep that in mind when I was doing the directional print. I don't know why, but I just didn't. And so I didn't have the same amount of fabric that I normally would to cut this out because of that. So I had to quilt another piece. And it's okay though, because I have a piece that's going to go on here that's going to coordinate with this. So it's going to look great. But I just wanted to let you know that you need to think about that. Otherwise, you'll be very disappointed, and when you go to put this on, it'll be vertical instead of the horizontal design. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm just going to finish up cutting our main body piece here, and then I'm going to set that aside because we don't need that for a little bit. So I have I've already prepared them, but I'm going to show them to you and how I've done this. So this is the longest one that we need, and this is going to be the zipper for the outer part of our bag. So this is what we will zip when we're zipping up all of our stuff. So I have this one put together, and as you can see, it is very long. And then I have 2 of these, because you're going to need 2 of these zippers. And what I've done is I have put 2 pulls here and put them on because this is going to be for our mesh pockets. So we'll need that. And then this one is going to be for our, I believe, our vinyl pocket. So we're going to need it for all of our pockets. Okay, so for our outer pockets on the outside of our bag, and then we'll need it for the mesh pockets on the inside of the bag. That's what we need that for. So that is what we have our zippers for. So I have these prepared, so we can move on since I've already got those. I'm gonna set those aside now because we don't need them at this point in time. Now what we're gonna do is what we've already done, which wants us to go ahead and prepare this center facing. Now I'm gonna show you what we do with this. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that aside because we don't need those. This is where you will need your elastic. It is fold over elastic. And this is what we use to put our threads in the center of our bag. So I'm going to show you how we're going to prepare this. So what we need to do is we need to bring our 1 inch or our 3-inch piece of fabric here that we prepared with our interfacing. We're going to mark it in the center. Take my Quilter Select marker, and then I'm going to draw a line straight down the center. And then I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to fold this and press it on this side. If I can get that right. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Now you should have something that looks like this. Should be folding in on those edges. And then what we're going to do is we are going to mark where we want to put our elastic. So what we do is we're going to come here. Now you can do this from the back side or you can do this from the front side. I usually do it from the back side, but I have a feeling that this fabric, because it is so hard to see this pin on here because of the colors, because of the purple, I'm going to do this from the front side. Now remember, mine erases. If you're using a friction pin, it comes off with the heat of an iron, and water soluble is with spray. But if you use a water soluble pin and then you put heat on it, you will set the ink in there. So you don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this just as it tells me. It says to go ahead and mark these lines. So I'm going to mark all the lines, and then I'm going to take my elastic and I'm going to line it up below the lines that I just drew, and then I'm going to clip it. Then I'm going to take it over to the machine and start stitching that down. All right, so now I am going to just fold this over, and then I'm going to put a clip at the top and a clip at the bottom, and then we're going to set this aside. This will be one of the very last things that we do when we finish assembling our bag. So we'll just put it aside and then come back to it later. Make sure you're labeling your pieces. It'll make it easier to put the bag together. We're going to start working on our handles now. So I'm going to fold this one in half, and then I'm going to clip it. This is our handle fabric, and it has interfacing on the back of it. Once I clip this, then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew it down with a 1/4 inch seam. Now I'm going to turn the tube inside out, and I'm just going to use my hemostats and my fingers to do this. And I'm just going to push all that fabric through and then pull it out. Next, I'm going to stick my webbing inside of that tube. I'm using a safety pin to push that webbing through that fabric to make it just a little bit easier. Now I'm going to put my pocket together. So I'm just adding the ribbon and the embellishments to it. And here you can see that we have both pockets are finished. I have my bag tags that I need to put on there. So I'm going to put one of them down in the corner because I don't want to cover the rabbit. So I'm going to put that one right there in the corner. And then on the other side, on the other pocket, I'm going to fold that pocket in half, and then I'm going to make a marking line right there just by that fold, and I'm going to stick my tag on there. and then I will stitch those down. Now I'm not worried about what that's going to look like because those are going to be interior pockets on the inside, the backing there, so no one will ever see that. So it won't matter if it's got stitching. All right, so I have my zipper laid out, just one of them, and I'm just going to cut this right down the middle. So now we have our zipper for this pocket, like so. And you want it to be a little bit longer. The instructions will tell you what you need to cut your zipper at. And then we're also going to add one here as well. So we're going to start preparing our pockets with our zippers, and then we are also going to be using our binding that we had cut. So we will use this as well. So here I'm just going to add on the bag tags, and I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to put those on the bags. Now it's time for us to put the zipper on. So I'm going to put it on face down, and then I'm going to put my zipper foot on, and I'm going to stitch the zipper onto that pocket. Then I'm going to trim the excess on the back and fold the zipper tape over, and then I'm going to top stitch using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm also going to do this on the back side to ensure that everything is tacked down, because we do not want that zipper tape to be coming up on our pocket, especially on the inside. So that's what I'm going to do here, is just tack that down. We're now going to prepare our binding that's going to go onto our zipper. And the way that I do this is I fold the binding in half, and then I fold the edges in again on itself, and then I'm going to tuck the zipper into that like it's its own little pocket. So I'm just going to put that in there, and then once I have that in there, I'm going to clip that down just to hold everything in place, and then I will stitch that down. Our pockets are done, and now we are ready to move on to our next pocket. So I want to just show you what these look like now that they've all been stitched down and they have the bindings on them. We are now moving on to our mesh pocket. So we're going to go ahead and find our mesh pocket bindings, and we are going to find our mesh pocket zipper, and you are going to need some clips, some of this tape if you're going to use it. This is double-sided tape. It helps the zipper, the binding to stick to the zipper. I highly recommend it. If you don't have any, you should probably think about getting some, but it's not necessary. It's not like you have to have it in order to make the bag, but it will make your life a whole lot easier, in my personal opinion. So we are going to make our binding just like we did before. So I will go and I will press this again in half, and then I'm going to fold my two edges in to the center, and then I'm going to fold again, and then I will have something that looks like this. Our mesh pocket. You have a piece of mesh like this that you've cut, and we are going to do our binding on the bottom. We're going to bind here. We're going to attach it to our zipper, and then we're going to attach another binding strip up here. So first things first. Since I have different colored ones, I have to figure out what I want to do first. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this one on the bottom here, and then these two I will use for my zipper because I think that would look really pretty. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, now this is optional, but I think I'm actually going to use a piece of my tape, my double-sided stick tape, just so I can hold my mesh inside of my binding. So I'm going to just press down that sticky tape now, and I'm going to try to pull that off. If you can't get it off the first couple times, then just make sure you just keep pressing hard with your fingernail, and eventually it will go down, and then you'll be able to pull it back easily. Then you're going to stick your mesh inside of your little binding pocket that you made, and then clip your binding onto your mesh. Now we're going to add the binding to the bottom of our zipper. We're going to do it the same way that we just did the mesh. We're going to put it inside of the binding and you can use your double-sided tape for that. I'm going to place some double-sided stick tape onto my zipper this time. I feel like it adheres a little bit easier to the zipper tape than it does the fabric. So I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to make sure that I'm getting it on there nice and even so that when I go to put the binding on there, there won't be any issues with it. So I'm just going to work with it until I can get it to where I want it to be. I don't want it too close to the zipper teeth, but I don't want it too close to the edge either. So you have to kind of eyeball it and find a happy medium there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down, and then I'm going to place our binding on our binding inside, I'm sorry, our zipper inside of our binding there. Now I'm going to stitch down the binding and attach it to the mesh. And now I'm going to add the binding side to our mesh, and that's going to be attached to our zipper. So I'm going to stitch down the binding that's attached to the zipper, then I'm going to take some more zipper tape, and then I am going to lay that binding on top of it on the other end of the zipper and then stitch that down. Now we're going to start assembling our vinyl pocket. This will be our zippered vinyl pocket in the bag. So I am going to prepare the binding the same way that we just did it for our mesh pocket. So we're going to fold that binding in half, and then we're going to take the edges on each side, fold those in, and then fold it over again. So we're going to make like that little pocket for our binding. Now I'm going to use the paper on the back of the vinyl, and I'm going to just roll that down because sewing with vinyl is very, very difficult, and it sticks to your sewing machine. So by leaving the paper on, it lets it slide easier while you're sewing. So I'm just going to tuck the vinyl inside of the binding that we have right there, and then I'm going to clip it, and that's going to hold that in place. And then I will stitch that down at the sewing machine, and I will use a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then I will work on the other part of the other side of the vinyl pocket, and that's where we will add our zipper to it. We're now ready to add our zipper. So I'm going to take my binding and I'm going to place my zipper inside of my binding on one side. I'm going to clip that down. Now I'm going to grab my vinyl piece, and I'm going to put that last piece of binding that I have on the bottom edge of my vinyl. And again, I'm going to pull that paper back. And that is what's going to help me to sew that smoothly so that it's not sticking to my sewing machine. Because remember, vinyl sticks to your sewing machine. And then I'm going to put some double-sided stick tape down on my zipper tape on the opposite side that does not have binding. And I'm going to adhere this binding that I'm clipping on right there to the zipper tape. And then I will stitch that down with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. We are creating another pocket. This is another vinyl pocket, so we're going to pull the vinyl back again just like we did before. But this time, instead of folding the binding in as many times as we did before, this time we're only going to fold the binding in half. And we are going to fold that binding in half and put raw edge to raw edge against our vinyl there. And then we will clip that down into place, and then we will stitch that down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once we have that stitched down, we are going to take that binding and fold it over the edge to the other side and then stitch it down again with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And now that I have everything clipped down, now I'm going to just start stitching this down and adding my binding to my vinyl. There, I flipped it over to the edge, and now I'm going to stitch it down with that 1/8 inch seam allowance, and we are done now with our vinyl pocket. All right, we're going to move on to our quilted pockets now, and we're just going to do the binding the same way we just did our last vinyl pocket. So I have gone around all the edges of my my pieces, and I have stitched 1/8 inch all the way around all of those pieces. I should have done that to begin with. I totally forgot, but it's okay, because if you forget and then you do it before you start attaching the pieces, then that's okay. We don't want those fraying. We don't want anything coming apart, and it also helps us because these are so bulky. It helps when you're putting the bag together. So here I have the pressing tool mat, and I am just going to start assembling that. That has 2 pieces of stabilizer, 1 piece of our main fabric, and then a piece of lining fabric on. We now need to round the corners, and so I'm going to use this clam ruler that I have, and I am just going to go around each corner and mark it. If you don't have one, if you have a little can, then you can use something like that, just anything that can round your corners. You're also going to need something to mark your fabric with, so I'm just using my pen here that I've been using, and this one just disappears with air. And so what I'm going to do is finish marking that, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut those lines around, and that will give me the curve that I need. We are now ready to start binding our pressing mat, and so I'm just laying down our binding as I go around and just sewing it on, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I am going to trim the edges around the circles, around the corners, to make it a little easier so that my binding will fold over, and then I'm going to top stitch, and then our pressing mat will be done. I'm going to make some markings so that I know where to place our pockets and our handles. I'm just laying our mesh pocket down and then clipping it in place, and then I'm placing our vinyl pocket and also our quilted pocket on top of our vinyl pocket, and then I am going to stitch all the way around. Now I'm stitching our lines to create the pockets for our tools and for our mesh pockets. So I'm just quilting straight lines, and that is what will give us those individual pockets. Now we're going to work on the opposite side, and we're going to do the same exact thing. So now we're ready to start putting our bag together. So we have everything done on this side, and it's looking great. I'm just cleaning up the bag a little bit, and I'm going to just trim off the excess zipper tape that we have. And now I'm going to start assembling the larger pockets on the other side. And now I'm stitching these down with a 1/8 inch seam allowance around all of the entire bag here to attach all of the pieces, all of the pockets. We're ready to assemble our handles now, so I'm just going to place that in the center where I had my markings to begin with, and I am just going to use a clip to hold those in place, and then I will take that and sew that down with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I have stitched down our first handle. Now I'm going to put our larger handle on the top, and I am just going to clip that into place, and I'm also going to mark it so that I know where I need to stitch. Now this one I'm going to stitch an X on both ends so that this will solidify the handle and keep it from, breaking, and it'll help when you're carrying lots of heavy weight in your bag. So it just makes it a little more sturdy. So that's what I'm going to do here. We are in the home stretch now. We're getting close to the end here. So I am going to take my tool that I used to round the corners on our tool pressing mat, and now I'm going to use that same tool to do this on the main bag that we are working with. I am just trimming threads from stitching down the handle, and I was using my eraser on the other side of that pin that I have because it has an eraser. And so that's what I was doing, was erasing all of those pen marks. Now I'm going to mark the corners, and I'm going to do it exactly the same way that I did our pressing mat. So I'm just going to mark it, and then I'm going to cut it with my scissors, and then I will stitch 1/8 inch around to seal all of those edges that I have just cut. And then we will start binding the bag. We're now ready to start adding our zipper tape to our bag. So we're going to put our zipper face side up. And so you want your right side up, and you will have instructions on where to mark it, to where to put your zipper in the instructions. And you'll want to follow that very closely because that will make a difference in how your bag will function. So I am just taking my time, and I'm going to clip this zipper halfway around this bag. And then I'm going to join it on the other side with my zipper. I have our zipper zipped on, and now I am just going to fold this in half, and I'm going to attach the other side of the zipper with the other raw edge, and you can see how I'm doing that right here. And you want to be careful when you're going around the rounded edges. You want to make sure that you're catching all of those edges there. So if you need to clip your edges on your body piece, the body piece of the bag, then you can do a couple of snips in the curved areas, and that will help everything to lay a little more flat. So just continue clipping all the way around the bag. Just work with it and take your time. And then you're going to unzip the bag once you have it all clipped together, and then you will sew the other zipper on to the other half of the bag. We are now ready to add the center facing to our bag. So we are going to take what we worked on at the very beginning here with the elastic, and we're going to place that in the center, and we're going to use some clips to clip that down, and then we are going to attach that with a 1/8 inch seam allowance by sewing it all the way around. And we want to be careful not to have any of our zipper pulls in the way. So we have zippers on the inside and we have zippers on the outside of the bag. So we want to make sure that those are out of the way. Otherwise we will hit that with a needle and we can either break a needle or break our machine. So we really want to be really careful when sewing this down. All right, so I'm just stitching that all the way around here in the center of the bag, and I am being careful not to hit any of my zipper pulls or anything like that. So it goes fairly quick. We're binding our bag now, so I'm going to bind it from the inside, and I am just going to stitch around, and I'm going to be careful when I'm going around the corners. I want to make sure that I'm catching every corner as I go around, making sure that my binding is adhering to the bag there. So then I'm just going to join the pieces together, and our bag is bound. Now I'm just going to fold over to the other side, and I'm going to hand stitch that binding down on the front because I do not want to have my zipper sewn down, and so hand sewing it will be the easiest way to finish the bag. All right, so I have finally finished the bag. It took me several days to do it. I did run into some little snags with this, and so I had hoped to have had this done last week on Friday, but instead it's going to be done this week on Tuesday. So anyway, I'm going to show you the bag. I am in love with the way that this bag turned out, and I hope that you are too. But here is our bag. This is the Running with Scissors bag. And this is the back of it, and I did create this little fabric flower on there as well, just to kind of give it a little embellishment, and also because this is where my binding joined and I didn't like the way that that looked, so I just added that little flower and made it look really cute. So we have our zippered pocket, and it is fully lined, as you can see. Okay, and then we have our bunny pocket. This turned out so cute. Again, another fully lined pocket. And then I added, on this one, I added one of the ribbons for embellishment. And then I also added a piece of fabric that I folded just to embellish it a little more and kind of tie the whole bag together. This has a little rabbit zipper pull on it. Oh, let's see if you can see that. I'm not even sure, but it's really cute. And then when we open up the bag, this is what we have. It turned out so very cute. I am really happy with the way that this turned out. And one of you is going to be lucky enough to win this. So all that you have to do to enter to win is I will have a link down below in the description box. And I'm also going to post a link in the comment section, and I'll pin it to the top so that you can easily find it. But you will see that link there, and it'll say where to enter for the giveaway. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You enter, and I will choose a winner. And so make sure you follow all of the directions on how to enter the giveaway. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. That is it for me today. If you would like to follow me on social media, the links are down below in the description box. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this because sharing is caring. Also, don't forget to click the little bell. You get notified each and every time that I upload an awesomely cool new video. Everything that you need supplies wise will be listed down below in the description box. That is actually an affiliate link. It is my Amazon store, and also I think I have a link to the fabric in Fat Quarter Shop, also an affiliate there, which means that I make a small commission if you purchase through my links. And when you do that, it just helps the channel to continue to grow, and it enables me to purchase patterns and to purchase fabric and show you all of these really great tutorials. So that's it. Keep on crafting. See you guys next time. Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.